Hey guys, Jin here, guild leader of Shenlong, Storm Rage US. Gonna do a quick overview for Warcraftlogs. And just as a heads up, guys, this video is created for my guild, for guildies to be able to understand what I'm looking for. So a lot of it is tailored for our guild feedback. If you gather anything out of this video that you find useful, then great, but otherwise, I appreciate you viewing. All right, so guys, when you log in to Warcraftlogs, you need to search for our guild, Shenlong on Storm Rage US. And once you do, you'll come up with a calendar here that will have all of the logs that are currently posted. And right now I have the logs posted from Tuesday, June 3rd. We did Heroic Siege of Orgrimmar, and we did 4 bosses that night. So if you want to look at the logs, you just click into it like you would on World of Logs. However, there's a lot more detail that's provided in Warcraftlogs, and I'm going to go over some of the things that I look at. So when you open it up, it automatically pops to the last pull that was in those logs. You can use the drop down to look at the wipes or look at trash, look at whatever you'd like to look at, but for purposes of this tutorial, we're going to look at our kill shot on Shah. You can look here and it tells you how long the encounter lasted. You can divide this down to show pets and things of that nature. But the summary page is what we're looking at here. So you can see the header where it says damage done, damage taken, healing done, and healing received with the different color indicators. And this is a good indication of how the damage goes out to the boss in a given fight, where we have our peaks and where we have our valleys. And these make sense. So when you look at these from a raid leader perspective, you expect to see a very, very high peak on the pull due to pre-potions, people using their 3-minute CDs and such. So you've got that initial pull burst damage that happens, and then the mechanics start to kick in, and you start seeing your peaks and valleys. Where you see the blue shaded, that is when heroism has been popped. So you expect to see a pretty good peak there as well. Heroism plus 3-minute CDs again. Heroism fades, CDs fade, and you start seeing your valleys again. The healing and damage taken and such are fairly hard to view on this graph simply because the damage output is so much greater than the healing output. You can change the options to show just healing or just damage taken, whatever you would like to see there. If we scroll down, you will see the raid composition, who the tanks were, DPS and healers. And keep in mind that this is a summary for the Shah kill fight. This will also show you the damage done by source. And what you'll see there is their DPS, the amount of damage that they pulled overall, and what percentage of the damage, the total damage that was output, was done by each individual. Over to the right, we have the healing done by source, and it shows you the same information. Scrolling down a little bit further, we have damage taken by ability. As a raid leader, this is one thing that I definitely look at very closely. See who's managing the mechanics the way that they're supposed to be managed. And we'll get back to that here in just a moment. If you look at the deaths table, there's no data available, and that's simply because we did not have any deaths during this pull. Had there been any deaths or battle reses or anything of that nature, that would be shown right here in this table. All right, so before we get into the various tabs on this fight, I'm going to just look at damage taken by ability. There's a lot of things that we can't avoid. There's a lot of mechanics that you just have to deal with. Mark of Arrogance on Shah is one of them. That's the dot that's put on a random person, and that has to be dispelled. That's not something that that you can individually mitigate much of. I mean, you could pop a personal CD to mitigate some of that damage, but you expect Mark of Arrogance on this fight to be one of the top damage outputs, and it was. Unleashed, this is something else that you really can't avoid unless you pop a raid CD or a personal cooldown. Melee is from the tank damage and the little ads that pop up. And you have your Swelling Pride. It's another thing we use raid CDs for. But the two that I really want to look at here is Collapsing Rift and Unstable Corruption. And this is where I think Warcraftlogs really stands out. So I can click on Collapsing Rift, and it will take me to another page. And what this page shows me is who took damage from collapsing rifts. And what I'm going to do is click on hits to sort that from highest number to lowest number, because this is a mechanic that you want to see a lot of hits on. So this is people that are actually running out, managing their debuff, and closing a rift as quickly as they can. So what I'm looking at here is in a 7-minute fight, you're expecting 5 to 7 hits on folks, pardon me, as long as they're managing their debuffs appropriately. So what I look at here is anybody that's 5 or above, I'm not really going to concern myself with. When we look at Hootenanny, we have 4 rift closures, which still, that's not bad as long as everybody else was doing their job. And Slacker had 3. So as you can see here, everybody in the raid did their job. Everybody was closing rifts. Most people did a fantastic job about getting that done. That's basically what I'm looking at. If I come in here and I find out that there's 1 or 2 people that maybe closed a single rift and we were wiping because of this, this would tell me who I need to talk to, who needs to fix that piece of their mechanic handling. All right, so I'm going to go back to the damage taken by source again. And now I want to look at unstable corruption. And what unstable corruption is, this is the explosion that the rifts send out, the black puddles on the ground that you're supposed to move out of. So what I'm looking at here, when I dive into this, is who stood in the bad and how often did they do it. So not to call anybody out, but in this particular video, obviously you can see the names here. And we could see that Hootenanny had 6 hits overall. Malthor had 3, and so forth and so on. So a lot of people did a very good job about not standing in the bad and staying out, dancing, so to say. That's what I call it when we're raiding, doing the dance, staying out of the bad. You will notice that there are only 9 names on here. So that means that one individual did not take any damage at all. So that would be the person that I would reach out to and congratulate and say, hey man, you did an amazing job at avoiding this mechanic. But usually before I congratulate anybody about a certain mechanic, I make sure that something else did not suffer because of it. A great example is if Hootenanny, for example, we didn't have any deaths in this particular pool, and we didn't have anybody get overcome. So he may have made the decision to stand still so that he could get some heals off that were critical to save somebody's life. In those instances, I'm not going to come down on him. He never wiped the group with any kind of mechanic for getting his pride too high. No one died, and he was a top healing output. So I'm not going to give him any crap about standing in the bad. Now, if we would have had any issues to where somebody would have died due to lack of healing, or let's say, he got his pride too high and had a projection that he missed and it blew up the raid, then I would come in here and look at this and say, look, you're driving your own pride up way too high by standing in the bad. You need to stop doing that. So that's another piece that I look at. Now what we can look at is all the tabs that are at the top. We can always click on summary to go back where we were. We've already looked at damage taken. Let's take a quick look at damage done. What this will allow you to do is you see a better chart of the peaks and valleys of the damage done. And then you're also going to see a little bit more detail about the active time and DPS and effective DPS. So to explain what that is from a raid leader's perspective, if I have somebody that does a million burst on the pool and then dies, their DPS may show up as a million, but their active time may show up as 1%, and their effective DPS, the damage that they do over the duration of the fight, would be lower. Now, in a fight like Shaw, you do have RNG at play, and I do know on this particular fight, Gil was pulled into the banishment realm several times. So you will see the actual DPS and the effective DPS have a fairly good variance there. So you can see she has a 96% uptime. Well, I can tell you that the 3.5% uptime that she doesn't have is due to her being banished and not being able to do anything. So I do look at uptime as much as I can. I like to see higher than 95% uptime depending on the fight. Some fights you can get a lot closer to 100%. And one thing you will always notice is that your top DPS, your top outputters, will always have some of the highest active time as well. They're always casting a spell. They're always doing something. So I do look at active time. If I see somebody like this that's at 88%, you can see their DPS was 294, but the effective DPS was 259. So I could dive deep into these logs and possibly find out that Zanjo here was banished several times, or possibly in a prison several times. Before I would approach Zanjo and say, hey, we need to get your active time a little bit higher, you really need to dive into the logs and see what happened to him to cause this to cause this low number here. All right, now we're going to look at healing really quick. And what I love about Warcraftlogs is it will show you absorbs and raw heals on the same line and show you what percentage those were. So when I look at Hootenanny here, I can tell that 49% of his healing was absorb healing, and then 51% was raw healing. Again, you get your active time. What is the time that person is actually actively healing? You get your overheal percentages, your heals per second, and your effective heals per second. One thing I do want to show here is we look at Phelan, and he had 100% active time. So that's telling me that he's managing his HOTS and keeping those on people all the time, which is great. I can also hover over his bar here. Well, I should be able to. There we go. And it will show me who his targets were, what his top spells cast were. Who did he have to heal the most? Which is crazy because it looks like it was him and the other healer that he had to heal. So, oh well, either way. Then I look at the tanks, make sure that they're doing their job, that they're casting heals when they can. I'll look at the Paladin tank, make sure that he's doing his job, as well as myself, the Druid tank. Am I using Frenzied Regen enough? Am I using Nature's Vigil cooldown? So forth and so on. And then another thing that I always look at on healing done is I like to hover over the individual's names and make sure that if we have a Warlock in the group, that they're using Hellstones. So I can look quickly here and say, okay, Strained used his. Gil, she used hers. Slacker used one, and he did some self-healing with Recuperate. The Warlock did not, but they used some of their Ember Tap stuff to heal themselves. The Mage did not. Adeline did not. Gibbet did not. So forth and so on. So I just go through it like that and see, okay, Who's using their toolkit? All right, moving on. You can look at buffs and debuffs all day long. There's a ton of stuff that you can find in here. How often were things up? Capacitance is the melee cloak proccing stuff, or I'm sorry, the meta. You can look at its uptime. There's tons of stuff that you can look at in here. I choose not to look at it too much. Debuffs. Um, we can look at banishment and see who got that. We can look at mark of arrogance and see, who had those dots and when. So there's a lot of good stuff that you can look at in debuffs as well. Resources and casts I don't really care about. Summons and deaths. If I had deaths, which I'll find a fight that has deaths here in a moment and show you what this tab will do. It's actually quite beautiful. The replay function. I'll let this play out for a couple of seconds here. But what's neat about this is down here in the bottom right, you can see a little bit of a raid frame that shows you the different colors of what they are. And I can hit play and you could see the dots moving around. Now Shah obviously is right in the center, and you could see his health bar right up here as well. And obviously the yellow and blue and white dot just collapsed for the Gift of the Titans buff, which is exactly what they want to do. And here in a moment, you should see all the DPS collapse in this same area. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And then you see all the little ads spawn. So that tells me right there that I can look at this and see who's not collapsing. Because as a tank and, fighting a very huge boss like that, I can't see what's going on the backside of the boss. When I tell everybody to collapse on this blue marker over here, I don't know if they're actually doing it or not. I know that they're supposed to, but I can come back in here and look and say, okay, I did not see that orange dot collapse. And then I can hover over that and say, okay, well, that's Phelan. I need to talk to Phelan about, hey, why didn't you collapse for that mechanic? This is a great little tool. The only way that you can use this in Warcraftlogs is if the person that you have uploading this is doing advanced combat logging. So if they're doing advanced combat logging, you can actually get this functionality to work. And from a raid leader's perspective, it's an amazing tool, especially if you're a tank, because you just can't see what's going on. All right, so now I'm going to go to the rankings on this particular fight. So we still have Shah of Pride, and this was still our kill shot. So I can go to view rankings now. And what this will do is tell us, of all the different guilds that are uploading logs to this particular site, how does Shenlong rank against those guilds? And execution ranking is the damage taken excluding tanks. So tanks doesn't count on this. How well is your DPS avoiding damage? How well is your raid leader calling out the raid CDs to mitigate raid damage? What this is saying that we are at the 53 percentile of all guilds that have uploaded logs to this site. So our rank is 1162 out of 2521. The speed ranking, how fast did we kill them? Well, we're only at the 14 percentile, which is absolutely fine for me because we are in progression. This was our first kill, so people are still farming gear, so that's understandable. Now for the damage output rankings. If you have a number in blue, that is a great sign. If you have a number in green, you're doing pretty good as well. If your number is in gray, you're below 25%. You're pretty low. All right, so if we look here in Elemental Shamans, you can see that Adeline scored a 51 percentile with a rank of 1388 out of 2800. With the DPS of 282. And we can look at this for every fight as well. Gibbet, the bear tank, did 44 percentile, 931 out of 1664. We have this same ranking for healers as well. So we can see Hootenanny's at the 51 percentile range, Phelan's at the 28 percentile range for this particular fight. Now, just to show a comparison, I'm going to use the drop down and just select the Fallen Protector's kill shot. All right. Now, execution rankings. How did we do as far as executing this fight? We did horribly. Um, very, very badly. We had 2 deaths. Everybody was taking a crap ton of damage. People weren't moving with Chasseur. They weren't moving out. As far as speed, us getting it done quicker than other guilds, how do we do? 36 percentile. So not bad. Not bad. Damage ranking by spec. For this particular fight and the specs, how did people do? So we had 1 person in the blue here. That was our bear tank. And then we had 4 people in the green, which is great. We had a couple other people that were below the 25 percentile mark. So what this gives you is an indicator of are you performing to your character's greatest ability for each individual fight. And some of this is going to be dependent upon how your raid leader sets you up as well. So like Malthor performing at 5 percentile, I actually have him manage, or he's tanking ads off to the side. So he's tanking bosses off to the side. He's never really able to cleave and get his damage going up. So in that instance, that's the raid structure, the raid setup that's hurting him. Had Malthor and Gibbet switch spots on bosses that we were tanking, he would probably be up in the 60 percentile and I would be down in the 5 percentile. So that's kind of how that works. So look at your rankings, but also think about what your raid leader had you do. Is he allowing you to multi-dot? Is he allowing you to cleave? Are you stuck doing a tower on Galacras? So your DPS is going to suffer. So don't judge yourself too much by what this percentage goes at. But if you know that you were allowed to sit there and tunnel the whole time and you pulled a 5 percentile, you're doing something wrong. You need to look at your class a little bit better. All right. Healing rankings by spec, same thing, but this is for the healers like usual. So we can look, and if you remember the Shaw fight that I just posted, these numbers were almost completely reversed. But on the Protectors fight, we see that Phalon is very high ranked for Resto Druids, and Hootenanny is in the lower piece of rankings for Disc Priests. Both of them had serious healing output the entire fight, though, which is pretty amazing. All right, so the last thing that I want to show you here is we're going to look at the deaths report. So I need to pick a fight where I know we had some deaths, which is going to be our Immersius kill shot. I click on the Deaths tab, and what I can see here off to the left-hand side is it's showing me the people who died and in the order that they died in. I can also look at this and see what killed them, which is pretty awesome. I can click on them to get more information. All right, so what we're seeing here is for Sour, he had the Shaw Corruption debuff, and he had quite a bit of it and was taking some serious dots from it. And then he had a little congealed Shaw come up and melee attack him for just 21k, but that was enough to put him over the edge. So it was the not managing the debuff that killed Sour. When we look at Slackers, it says Slacker dies from Immersius's melee. Now, I'm not exactly sure how that happened, because I do know in this fight that the tanks never lost threat, and not that I saw anyway. But obviously what this is saying is that somehow or another, Slacker got threat on Immersius, and it hit him for 695k. One-shotted him. So that's avoidable. That's something we need to figure out. I mean, this could be that Immersius was just coming up from his second phase and just popped Slacker right off the bat. Who knows? But either way, Slacker got killed. Now we look at Malthor, and it says here that the actual death was from falling damage, which is kind of crazy. You don't expect that in a fight too often, but that was just what put him over the top. If we look down here, we can see, at 84 seconds before he died, he had a life bloom tick on him. Congeal Shah hit him. Then he got hit by Swirl at 0.8 seconds, and that was 203K. Swirl got him again for 163K. You can see here that Malthor popped a personal cooldown to try to save himself. So he got hit with the first Swirl, popped a personal cooldown, which is exactly what you want to see from a raider. You want to see, hey, I'm getting screwed up here. Let's protect ourselves. Let's have some instantaneous reaction time. So he popped Divine Protection. Swirl hit him again for 163K. He had a few Congealed Shahs hit him. He parried one of them. Swirl hit him again. His Divine Protection faded. And obviously the fountain that shoots him up in the air took what little bit of health that he had left and killed him. So I think this is, from a raid leader's perspective, this tells me, hey, mistakes happen. Sometimes the Swirl can kind of global you, but what are you doing about it? And I can look here that Malthor popped his Divine Protection once he knew he was in trouble. Reduces magical damage taken by 40%. I mean, that is what you expect of a raider. So even though Malthor died here, I don't have any feedback for him. He did what he could do. RNG got him. He popped cooldowns when he could. There's no feedback needed there. Now, when I look at Sour, if I see that we're getting a bunch of these Shah corruption dots stacking up, yeah, I'll just simply say, hey, I need you to manage your debuff a little bit better. I might tell a healer, hey, watch the mage. If he stacks it up too high, go ahead and dispel him. So that's kind of what we're looking at for deaths there, guys. Really like the deaths tab in Warcraftlogs. It's very, very beautiful thing. So if you guys have any questions or feedback or anything of that nature, please let me know, and I'll try to address those. I'm going to have this on our guild website for everyone to use to understand a little bit better. But if there's something you think that I'm missing in this tutorial, there's something that you want to learn a little bit more about, please let me know, and I'll try to get it done for you. Thanks.